Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to our event today, the Human Stack. I always want to say the Human Fund, a little Seinfeld joke there, right? The Human Fund, if you're old enough to remember that. I am Dan Tomaszewski with Everything MSP, and we also have Marnie Stockman and Alex Farling with Lifecycle Insights. Welcome, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate you guys being here. Having a good day today?
It is plenty hot in Maryland.
It is. It's gross.
I agree to that.
It went from nice to gross about like that.
It's a beautiful day here in Michigan. Let me just double check the temperature. I think it's 70 degrees. It's actually very nice here. 70 is a great temp where it's not gross yet, so can't complain. All right, so as we have people entering in here, just a couple housekeeping things. We will have a replay available. So the replay will be for, of course, anybody within your organization that you'd like to share this with. You're going to learn a lot of valuable insights here today. It's always great to pass that on. One of the beauties of our channel is sharing is caring, and we love to pass information on to help others out, as well as if you have any other friends, colleagues in the MSP industry, if you want to share it with them, that would be great as well. We're going to talk about the Human Stack, and I'll just go through our description of today's event. Is MSPs have people, process, and products in place for their tech stack. And we're here to talk about how to get your house in order around the Human Stack. We, of course, have Marnie Stockman, and Marnie, who wrote the book on customer success for MSPs, who, if you saw my post a little while ago, there is a Kindle edition and a soft pasta edition available.
What is Dan doing, calling me out for a soft pasta edition?
And sure enough, even Amazon can't hire good help these days.
Yeah, and I think what happened is just all of a sudden Edge started going in for Amazon started going in Spanish. And so I quickly just clicked the transcribe button, and somehow it's transcribing soft. You must just be soft copy.
Paperback or something like that.
Yeah.
A paperback into soft pasta.
Oh, my Spanish is bad, but even I know that's wrong.
Exactly. So, and as well as we have Alex here to talk about how to drive your own success for better customer success. And customer success is the name of the game, right?
Absolutely. So before I even click on the first slide, when you say we've got people, process, and product for the other pieces, Gartner did a study in 2022 that said that businesses expect 85% of their interaction with an enterprise partner of theirs, which you could assume a managed service provider would be an enterprise service for a small business, that they want that 85% of that engagement they expect to be technology-based, automation, email, etc. But 15% they're expecting human interaction, which is interesting. That human interaction, right? Alex and I talk about that all day, every day, is the business review, the sales calls, the conversations, etc. So 85% of the way, technology gets you 85% of the way. And then it is how you're dealing with the human element, the human stack, as we said, that gets you the rest of the way. So
it's ironic too, because the entire industry, when they started to launch remote management and monitoring tools, didn't they all just come to us and say, you can solve about 85% of your stuff remotely without having to talk to a human?
Right.
Well, guess what? That doesn't leave very much left for us to get back out there and get in front of our customers.
Right.
So you got to make it high impact and not just a quick chit chat, right? It's got to be value driven, because what I think everyone's learned in the remote world is I have no time for valueless, meaningless engagement, right? If we're going to actually have face-to-face conversations, et cetera.
Yeah, and for some of us, it's stepping outside of our comfort zone, which we'll talk more about. But it's not just a traditional conversation about the things that we have such a passion for, which is blinky lights, right?
Shiny
Flux
things. Yeah.
capacitors, so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there's any way to kill a conversation is to talk about something that our audience doesn't have any clue about. And we want to have a conversation just like, when you're, at the holiday family gathering, right? And let's say you're not into sports and all of a sudden you're just kind of sitting there, you're like, yeah, I don't know about this or that when it comes to the football season. And then all of a sudden someone starts talking about something that's of great passion for you. And all of a sudden you see this engagement of yourself with others completely change. And so that's where we have to have those proper conversations. And that's where that human stack comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always tell how much I want to engage with the person next to me on the plane by how I respond to what do you do, right?
Exactly.
It's based on whether or not I want them to engage in the reaction, really. I threw up a couple slides of what I aim to, Alex will always freely point out I was a teacher and always like to run it like it's a classroom. So by golly, we'll be done on time because I'm used to a bell dismissing people.
Right.
I had very little control. But the other piece is I think it's important that you came to the party for a reason. So let's make sure we aim to deliver you some value while you're here. So we're hoping you walk away with a compelling why that customer success is good for your customers and therefore good for you. We're going to talk through an activity that we do with a lot of our partners around segmenting their customer base. And if you haven't done this activity before, I think there's a lot of value in thinking through it. It is absolutely what I did when I was a customer success manager. We got acquired 4 times. So we went from having 90 clients to 150 to 300 to 900 in those acquisitions. And so if you're going to do that, you have to have a way to manage 900. The same process you use for 90 does not work for 900, and segmenting is part of what that was. Of course.
And that's an important conversation to have with MSPs today too, right? Because one of the ways that they're finding to grow faster than organic is acquisition. And so this has to get wrapped into that conversation.
That is a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, because the quickest way to kill, I mean, we talked about a, and I don't want to steal the thunder, but there's a great Warren Buffett quote, right?
Yeah.
In the quote is that, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it.
Yep.
Well, the same thing, that completely coincides with, if we're looking at doing an acquisition, or we're looking to bring on and start doing some major projects, that those customers that know us, love us, have these expectations. If we aren't prepared for this new influx of new clients that we have to take care of, then that can just go south so quickly. It might look great that, all these dollar signs, but if those dollar signs are, ultimately become bleeding dollar signs, then that's not a good thing for us for the long term.
Well, and even before you get to acquisition, Alex and I often talk with folks who are hiring their first account manager, customer success manager, VCIO, et cetera. But think about how scary it is if you've been the owner that held all the relationships and now you're going to hand over that relationship, right? That your business is your relationship and your reputation. And when you hand that to a new human, that can be very scary. So
it is very scary. I did it. It's panic stricken. Like it really is.
So you have to have the processes in place to set the expectation and then the metrics to watch what that looks like. So that's kind of where we come in on the business reviews, of course, as a foundation for growing your business. But how do you prioritize the next steps to deliver customer success? And customer success exists in an MSP if you're a sole man shop and 1/16 of the hats that you wear is customer success, right? That's part of your job. Or if you've grown and you have a team of 7 VCIOs with TAMs, supporting them. So customer success always plays a role, whether you're a one-person shop or, a multi-million-dollar MSP with a full team to address that. Dan, you mentioned the quotes. I think that the first one that you mentioned is top on the list. So we do you have a poll you want to throw up for this? Okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead and launch that poll here.
So we just launched a poll with these quotes. So we don't need to read to you. Take a second, read the poll, and then vote on the one that speaks to you when it comes in terms of customer success. I'll be quiet for a minute.
We need to have Jeopardy music playing right now.
Just thinking that I was going to ask you to hum it. Like,
Yeah.
Wait, I will. We learned last year. Dan's not a big Jeopardy watcher, so let me do it.
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun,
right,
dun,
there we go.
dun, 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 dun,
Done.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, we'll go ahead and share these results here.
So you already spoke to the first one, right? But
Yeah.
it takes 20 years to build a reputation, 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. My one story of that is when I first became a customer success manager. The CEO lived in Florida. I lived in Maryland, and he had large accounts in Florida. I had large accounts in Maryland, and we both gotten each $1 million ARR account at the same time. So my first day in, I went and visited the Maryland one, and he went to visit the Florida one. So it was that fear of, what is Marnie doing, right? As she works remotely, I haven't met with her, I don't know what's going on. And Fridays at 5:30, I would get a panic-stricken call from him because he just remembered I existed at the end of the week. And he would say, how's Howard, Hartford, Queen Anne, et cetera, wanting to know how all of the status of all of his accounts. And so that he had that fear of, in a week, right, when he hadn't talked to any of his accounts and entrusted it to somebody else, what happened. So that's what I think of when I see that one.
Yeah, and you guys both hit on it when you mentioned, if you have been the primary point of contact in your business, if you've been the sole person as the face of your organization for years, and then all of a sudden you bring somebody new on, and that person is starting to take over, maybe not completely, but even in a part-time fashion, as far as being the face of the client, things can, they're not used to how maybe that person is doing business.
And there becomes a disconnect, right? So first you got the one-man show. Not only do I do all the tickets, but I take all the customer service calls. I solve all the problems. When there's a panic, they call me. When something's wrong, they call me. Then I hire a tech. Now he starts solving some tickets, but I'm still doing the QBRs. I'm still taking the escalations. I'm still involved. I hire another tech. Maybe I do a few less escalations, but I'm still involved. I'm still doing all the QBRs. I hire 5 techs. I'm still doing the QBRs. At some point, I grow to the size where I'm not doing the QBRs anymore. And guess what I lost? I lost the feedback loop where I go, how are my guys doing?
Right.
Is everything okay? Right. And at some point you hire a sales guy, and next thing you know, you have a customer who someone else brought on in sales, someone else services, and someone else does QBRs for, and you've never met them.
Right.
Right. There really has to be process in place for all of that to work and the experience to be consistent across your company. And I went through that at my MSP. When I sold my MSP, I had customers who I had never met. And that is, in my mind, the successful deployment of a process.
And that will create anxiety,
Oh, yeah.
Not only for the client, but it's going to create anxiety for you, because when you always have your finger on the pulse of the customer and the strength of that relationship day in, day out, you feel comfortable and confident. You can go to bed and you can sleep well at night. When you don't have your finger on the pulse of the customer and you're handing it off to someone else, and then you have that disconnect, if you don't have the processes in place to ensure that even though someone else is in that role, that what the process is and that you have that same connection, then you're going to go to bed at night feeling anxious, worried about, am I going to wake up and get a letter from a customer indicating that they've decided to exit our agreement? And there's nothing worse than that. And we have enough pressure. We have enough, anxiety in just dealing with technology. Why add more to that?
Yeah.
And if you look at the third quote, right, customer success is where 90% of the revenue is. If that's why the fear comes in, because losing a customer, first, it costs more to get a new customer than it does to retain an old one. it's 90% of where your retention is. And what's the quote, Alex, that, a happy customer tells one person
Tells
and
one
an
person,
angry tells 10.
tells 9
You
or
know,
10
so
or whatever it is. Yeah.
whatever the thing is. So, there's a big threat there. If you really don't deliver on
And
customer.
I'd imagine it's worse in the days of social media. I'm pretty sure that quote's before social media.
Right.
Now it's, a happy customer tells 1 and a Karen tells 14 or 1400.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's exponentially different.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the other two quotes that are up here kind of relate to the same piece. And I think the piece of it I like in Adam Toporik's quote is to add value after the sale. And I think, Alex, we talk about that all the time in a business review. Thought before I click onto the segmentation piece, if you wanted to give a statement about why QBRs are really showing the value that MSPs have previously struggled to present.
Right. MSPs have got a tough job. There's absolutely nothing easy about what we do. And it very quickly turns into I always say, the customer used to know why they called you because everything was broke, right? In a break fix environment, they call you, it's broke, you fix it, they send you a bill, right? When we move to managed services, now I send them a bill every month, whether something's broken or not. In fact, my goal is to make sure nothing's ever broken and that they never call me. So I actually had this experience with a customer. I went into their office and said, so, it used to be everything was broke and we called you all the time and we paid you $3,000 a month. Now I pay you $3,000 a month and I never talk to you. What the hell do I pay you for anyway? And so, we've got to go back to that customer and help them realize what kind of risk is out there, how we help them manage that risk, and what additional things we're doing above and beyond just the help desk services, which really are just, in most places, a lot of them are reactionary. What are we doing above and beyond that to make sure that we've helped them budget, that we've helped them strategically plan, that we've helped them really understand how technology drives the business? And if we can do those things, then we're starting to show value beyond the break fix guy or the trunk slammer up the street.
Absolutely. And I love quotes. I love to share quotes within my organization because they just become thought provoking and it gets people thinking about things, because how you interpret a quote is going to be completely different how maybe members of your team interpret that quote. And if you have a conversation about it, you not only have one interpretation, which might be yours, which you feel as if, okay, this is how I'm seeing it and how I feel like you should see it, but others are going to be coming up with things that you're going to be like, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way, but it just gets them thinking about it. It gets them thinking beyond just being an employee. They're part of this organization. They're part of the fabric of this organization. They make this organization, and we want them to have those type of thought processes and those internal conversations.
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna piggyback off of that and go through this one fairly quickly because Alex kind of spoke to pieces of it. Two thoughts from Paul Dipple, who said there are two key drivers in increasing the operational level and therefore valuation of an MSP. What percent of your clients purchase your full stack, right? Something you can push toward in a business review. And are you doing business reviews for all of your clients? So that kind of leads us to how often are we doing business reviews, or if we are doing business reviews. So Dan, I think you have a poll for this one as well. On the upper left-hand side of the graphic, you see, if I were asked you to rate your QBR process, nope, not doing them at all. Ad hoc. So you meet with folks when you can. Some clients, all clients, or true QBRs. So everybody's on a cadence. And I'll be curious. We see a lot of the first three, to be quite honest, especially nope or maybe ad hoc. So we're getting some results in that would support that message for sure. Do I need to do the Jeopardy music again? Oh, we have one that do all clients. Very nice. I'm sure that's the life cycler in the audience that has
Right.
dialed in the rest.
Exactly.
So we can see the results coming in and ad hoc, and some clients are very typical responses. Alex and I have these conversations all day, every day with folks.
Yep.
But one of the things, so you can see I've got a segmentation graph up on the screen. And the idea here is you really need to think about what all clients need, want, and deserve. Alex, I know you have thoughts on that. Before we dig in and have them start thinking through, do you want to share your thoughts on, does everybody need one quarterly?
No, absolutely not. And I kind of I always like to lean on people smarter than me and learn what they're talking about and bring it forward to our customers. If you listen to C-level operations or Chartech, they both agree on this. And if the two of them agree, I think we're headed in the right direction.
We'll go with this.
Although I challenge them a little bit, they both use $1,000 a month as a metric you should use. And they say for every $1,000 a month the customer spends, you should give them one meeting a year around strategic planning. So $1,000 a month customer gets an annual strategic business review. A $4,000 a month customer gets a quarterly strategic business review. A $12,000 a month customer gets a monthly meeting. I think that number is going to increase. I think we're going to get to where $1,500 equals one a year, $2,000 equals one a year. But I think you should have some metric inside your MSP that you use to help you set that cadence, to help you decide when and how to meet with folks. I think that number is going up because of the cost of cybersecurity, because of the increased cost in just maintaining managed services in the world of security, compliance, and litigation that we're all living in. So I think those guys will start to adjust that number in the near future, but I think it's important that we have something to start with.
Yeah, I know. And I think you're right completely that number may change, but the idea behind why that
Yep.
segmenting exists does not change.
Yep.
So, if you're sitting there with a scratch pad or you're Alex and have OneNote on an iPad with an Apple Pen in front of you,
I feel like that was a shot
and
from the Mac girl, no
I'm
less.
on a MacBook Pro, so if it was a shot, it was a
I mean, right
sketch out the segmentation graph and think about this, right? So think about one of your highest paying customers. That's a lot of effort, right? So somebody that if you lost them, this, Dan, would keep you up all night, right? This would severely impact the bottom line. But
so let's talk through it. Like my highest paying customer at my MSP had 180 employees,
Okay.
9 locations, super complicated, a bunch of different line of business applications depending on the brand, the department that I was working with. So effort and complexity, they're up here, value, they're over here. So they're about where that A is on my graph, right?
Yeah. So that's how we're thinking about this. It's value across the bottom, across horizontally of how much MRR are they bringing in, and complexity or effort is the vertical scale. And it is, to Alex's point, not just a single piece. It could be number of tickets they enter. It could be that they're compliant, a DoD type of contract that requires a ton of security compliance work. It could be 9 locations. That's exhausting in and of itself.
Yep.
So think about one of those partners and put them in quadrant A in your mind. Now let's think about probably your favorite partner, right? They pay you good money. They're probably your highest profitability partner, and they're low effort. So you've got them dialed in. To Alex's point, this is the person that you could potentially lose if you're not doing a business review with them, because everything's so dialed in. They don't have to talk to you very often. You don't have to talk to them, and they're good profit. So they go down in quadrant B. And we're going to go over to C for a minute. So this is low value, low effort. So who lands here? Small shops that, they've got 5 users. They don't have the time to speak to you quarterly, and they don't pay you the money for you to speak to them quarterly. Right. But you've got processes in place dialed in for them that they're low effort, right? So they're good clients. You might have a bunch of them. This is a profitable space.
This is the client that a lot of MSPs look at and go, are they even worth it? And every time they look at them, they go, well, they haven't called me in 2 months. We'll let them stay on, right? We're on the fence on these guys. Are they even worth me keeping it? And I had one of those. They were 2 users on a hosted RDS appliance in the cloud. They had no data local. Everything's on one box in the cloud. It was easy to manage. It was dialed in. It was locked up tight. They called me once every 3 months to reset a password or something, and we never heard from them. And they've spent $440 a month.
Right.
So hard to argue with that, right?
Easy money. Yep.
But as we look at quadrants A, B, and C.
But you're not getting rich on it.
Right. Well, you think high touch for A. These are quarterly, maybe monthly, right? If you use what Alex's algorithm or just, some thinking through what they really need. These are your high touch folks. Quadrant B, your mid touch. So do these deserve face-to-face semi-annual? Do they deserve a virtual one? every 6 months, and maybe one annual, or are they annual folks, right? So high touch, mid touch. C is tech touch. To Alex's point, that 2 user does not have time to have Alex come in and spend 3 hours and bring him 2 donuts to have that conversation.
Right.
But what can you automate? This is where all of the tools that I'm sure you're automating for marketing can be used to drive to show your value. We talked about in the last slide, you need to show your value after the sale. So give them a reminder of it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and this is what I'm doing for you. You do have a backup and discovery, backup disaster recovery plan. If there's something in the news and you need to say, okay, you've seen ransomware occurred with blah, blah, blah. This is what we're doing to protect you, right? To be able to remarket with technology, it's a touch that will remind them that you are still doing that work for them. And you can also offer new services. They are often the place to land and expand. If you're not communicating with them, this is where the threat can come in, where somebody else who comes in and gives them the time to talk to them could potentially break into one of your clients and land and expand themselves. So that's the kind of thing you think about in this tech touch quadrant. Top left, what are they? High effort, low value.
They're
So
the clients that are costing you money.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. You know who they are. You probably don't even want to write their name down because you don't even want them on the docket. But you've got 3 choices. 1, renegotiate their contract and show them why they need to pay you more money for the services they're getting. 2,
Which, if we think about it, moves them into quadrant A, right?
quadrant. That's exactly right.
Yep.
2, figure out why they're squeaky and make them less squeaky, right? Are there problem assets? Let's move them down. Are there tickets, the same humans having the same problem? Do they need training? But let's move their effort level down so they are now at least profitable and they are low value, low effort. Or you may have a straggler, and neither Alex or I like to recommend firing clients, but if they're truly not worth the effort, these are the ones that you've got to figure out. Can I move them right? Can I move them down? Or do I need to move them out?
And when we look at a lot of things that we do in our business, we say, okay, we want to have the same firewall. We want to have the same AV. We want to have this, our entire stack. We want to have consistency because it's easier to deliver to our clients, to deliver the service to our clients. But when we're talking about QBRs, when we're talking about things that are on the strategic value side, it is not cookie cutter. It is not a one size fits all. We have to find what works best for that client. And that's what Alex and Marnie are talking about here, is just really looking and evaluating, because we just cannot deliver the same thing for everyone.
No, but it's so easy for us to sit in our bullpen with our techs and just bitch about this client and be upset over them and never go out and address it. And
Right.
by having this strategic meeting where we go in with a goal and say, look, I'm either going to simplify this client, or I'm going to raise their prices, or they'll find their own way out.
Right.
You meet it head on. You get all the animosity out. You make your techs happier. Like when you come back from that meeting, your techs go, whew, thank God, man, I'm tired of talking to them. And you
Right.
hear more about it after something's happened than before. Your techs didn't want to tell you about this because they were worried it was going to cost you money, or they wanted to make sure they didn't lose their job when customers go out the door. I only ever fired 2 customers at my MSP. One of them was just rude and mean to everyone. And I called and said, you're not going to speak to us that way again. And when they did, the door hit them, and that's fine. The other one was one where we sat down and said, look, I'm not making money at this deal. That's just not a good fit for us. We're going to have to either charge you more or really simplify some things. They didn't want to get off of G Suite. They didn't want to make some other changes. They didn't want to spend more money. I gave them 30 days. They called me and said, well, you're wrong. Somebody wanted my business so bad they're doing it $25 cheaper than you were. And I said, well, there's always somebody willing to go out of business faster than me. But it's not going to be me. And, I only did it with 2 clients in 16 and a half years, but, most clients are reasonable, and you can have a good discussion with them about what's causing the problem and find your way to either a higher price or a more supportable environment.
Right.
And as you talked through that, it reminded me that the next screenshot was a picture of the
Placement of all this,
segmentation graph with the colors, where we've colored half of them. The colors represent the health. So how healthy are they in each of those quadrants, right? And as you think through some of what Dan talked about, if they're not fully aligned to your best practices, does that make them less healthy, right? So if I have somebody in my top right quadrant that is colored red, they're high value, high effort. I'm going to enact a CPR playlist, right? Do some recovery program to get them back on board. In that low, I've got somebody over there that's all the way at the tippy top of high effort and low value. That's red. They're probably my biggest headache. So I'm going to treat that very differently. But I think looking at the health of the client in the quadrants make a difference as well. And if you can find ways to automate pieces so that that low effort, low complexity client is happy. Remember, we talked about 15%. That's not the same 15% for everybody that requires human interaction. That could be a phone call a year, right?
Well, and what is 15% of the engagement that you have with the client who
Right.
calls you 4 times a year, right?
Oh,
It's a very small thing. It's a phone
Very
call.
little.
It's a, yeah.
That's where I think people think it's the same, right? Percentages are percents for a reason because it doesn't represent the same amount of time.
Yep.
So, as we talk through that segmentation, we encourage folks to really define your cadence. For folks that are doing this ad hoc or for some clients, we would argue that all clients need something. All clients do not need the same thing. And so it's really important, create this segmentation chart and define what your goal is for each of those segments and who's going to get quarterly. Alex and I usually draw a diagonal line across that high touch one. Some of those might require monthly, right? If you've got some huge contracts, they might meet more than quarterly or have different types of meetings, who's getting semi-annual, and really chart that out and then decide what each of them are going to get. So on the left-hand side, we've given you some starter pieces. If you haven't done anything with folks, where do you want to start with them, right? Have you scheduled a QBR? Do you have clean data to present to them, right? Every cybersecurity liability insurance policy and cybersecurity framework is asking you if you've delivered asset inventory and user inventories. Have you done that, right? Have you built risk assessments? Have you reviewed data with them and given them recommendations? So we kind of offered this as a checklist to say, what can you put in each of these boxes that we want to be able to deliver to the clients? The other piece, and some of the quotes kind of talked to this, Alex, that last quote where we were talking about what value do you deliver after the fact. We have had some great conversations with our partners recently about how they have moved the needle from very tactical conversations to strategic, and some of it's around setting goals. Do you want to talk about how you see? I mean, we talk to folks all day, every day about this, and I've got some of the questions that folks deliver.
Well, a big piece of this is about, making sure that we're talking the client's language. We talk a lot about, and we did a policy and procedure workshop with Matt Lee and Brian Blakely from Cosint, and it was one of the best workshops I've ever sat in. But they talk a lot about make sure that everything that you write in your policy is in the language of your customer. Well, that's the same for your QBR. If I'm in here talking about migrations to Azure and VMs and Azure AD and all these things that my client doesn't understand, I'm going to lose them. They're not going to see value in the same things that I do. If I'm talking to my client about your salespeople can work from the coffee shop and you can acquire a company in the next county over and everything is in the cloud, which means it's scalable. You don't have to buy new servers. You don't have to buy, new switches and wireless. And it's a lot lower cost of ownership to buy that competitor or to expand into a new business or do the next thing. They understand that. That's in their language. They get that. So if we can take a business problem, a technology problem, and align it with their goals and their needs, which are to grow the business, make more money, hire salespeople, whatever. If we can align those two, that's where the magic happens, right? They're willing to spend money on the thing that leads toward their goal. So taking your client's goals, learning from them about what's going on in their business really helps. And, to the point, a lot of clients are still in kind of a tough spot at the end of COVID. If I'm coming into my client going, hey, I need 40 grand to replace a bunch of equipment and COVID just knocked the wind out of them, we're going to have they're not going to appreciate that recommendation. So if I've already had the conversation with my customer and said, oh, I understand your business has contracted about 40% since COVID happened. You've had to lay some people off. Had to be tough. I assume this is a bad time to talk about workstation replacement. Maybe we should, buy the $50 extended warranty and try and push these into next year, and let the client know that we understand their business pain. We're here to work with them through it. And strategy is part of that. and they'll come back and engage you in that strategic conversation. And that's really where we went.
And that the key is that business owner to business owner conversation, having that business owner to business owner conversation makes or breaks how that QBR is going to be. Because when it's more of the client vendor, it's not the partnership, but it's tech versus business owner, then we have two different levels. They feel as if we're not in sync, and the decisions that we're expecting them to make and hope that they will make, whether it be during this meeting or shortly after, may not happen because there's still a level of confusion on their side that they've become lost, and they don't know how to make that decision because the conversation wasn't clear enough and was too eclectic, if you will.
What you're describing is something I call giving your client permission to say yes, right? We have to give them, and I go back to the Colin Powell rule. We're talking about great quotes. Colin Powell used to say, give me between 30 and 70% of the information and I can make the right decision every time. If you give me less than 30%, I'm undereducated and I'm going to make a bad decision. If you give me more than 70%, I'm going to suffer from, too much information and not be able to make a decision because I'm trying to parse way too much stuff. So, when you're delivering to that customer, give them just enough information that they can make the decision, that you can lead them to the yes. They feel like it's their idea because they were informed, and not so much information that they're overwhelmed, and deliver it in their language. And that's how you'll have success.
If I could just add one more thing to that, I think often when we feel like we have this connection with the client, like, they're understanding it, they're getting it. I think we have this tendency to want to continue to have the conversation go even deeper, and what ends up happening is we feel as if, oh, they're getting it, they're understanding it. And sometimes we go too far, where all of a sudden we've gone from them understanding it to we've gone off the deep end, where all of a sudden they're back to a state of confusion. And there's that too much information, like the quote that you're talking about. So you have to know when to read or how to read the client to know they get it, they got it, and then you move on.
Like a good salesperson, when you've made the sale, stop talking. I was on a webinar the other day, and somebody asked me, how do you hire for these customer success humans or somebody to have these conversations? And I said, hire a teacher. Why? Because they're very good at English to English translation, right? So you mentioned the translate tech to business and business to tech, but if you can get somebody that'll speak the common language, that helps tremendously. You also mentioned something earlier. I was on a panelist with Will, who was the founder of Match.com. And he said he would go in every Monday and write on the board, most money divided by least effort, right? So your business will grow if you focus on doing the things that will make the most money or decrease effort. And you could have that conversation with your partners, right? What makes you money? What are the things that you're doing that make money? And how can technology support that? What is taking too much time, effort, and technology can help reduce effort, right? With all the process savings, et cetera. So I think those are other ways to have kind of that same conversation. Some of what we talked about has already alluded to this. So Dan, you were mentioning when folks are aligned to your best practices and services, they're more supportable, more scalable. Alex and I talk about this. As a matter of fact, to be fair, Alex said these words and I wrote them on my whiteboard, and I finally just typed them onto a PowerPoint slide deck instead of having them on my whiteboard, right? The way Alex said it was, you are winning as an MSP if folks are fully aligned to your stack. And the reason you're winning is because it makes them more supportable, scalable, secure, and sticky. He probably said more aligned, but really I do like alliteration, so I put sticky in there. So Alex, what are your thoughts on stack alignment before we kind of talk through what that looks like?
Yeah, so we talk about this a lot, there is a point at which stack alignment impacts customer success, impacts customer satisfaction. If 95% of my customers are on Meraki firewalls and I know how to manage them, and I let that one customer come in because they had just bought that Sophos box and let them keep it for the next 3 years because they already had prepaid for the licensing and all that, and then something's wrong with that firewall, my tech is learning on the job to fix it, and that client has more downtime. And so it's something that we actually build into our risk assessment is, you actually are at risk of increased downtime by being out of line with my supportable stack. And that's why I always make the argument that while, CIS and NIST want a customer, a small business, to be in line with their framework, an MSP actually wants to do a framework plus risk assessment, which is framework plus supportability. Because even if I adopt the entire CIS framework, there's nobody there who knows how to operate the equipment that plugs the hole for, IPS IDS on a firewall or a multi-factor authentication or whatever the widget is. If nobody knows how to work the widget, that customer's still going to have a bad experience when there's a technical problem. And that's going to fall back on me. It's going to become a customer satisfaction issue. Even though they're probably reasonably secure, I'm going to lose the customer.
And it's so easy to get stuck into, but if there is a problem, I'm sure we can figure it out. We can get it taken care of, but
and we'll figure it out eventually.
Right. But the one quote a business mentor of mine taught me many, many moons ago is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I love that one because, and I use that day in, day out, because we could support this alternate firewall that's outside of our stack. Sure, we could. But we're going to run into all the things that you just talked about, the downtime, the dissatisfaction, and it's going to end up being defeating for the team from a morale perspective. Because
and when you come back to that customer and say, remember when you didn't want to spend $29 a month for me to bring you a firewall?
Right.
That's why you've been down for the last 5 hours. They're going to go, Dan, shut up and get out of here. Right. And that's going to be, they're not going to want to hear the I told you so afterwards. And you'll have the moment for the I told you so. It never fails.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we talk about how to get visibility on this. And one of the pieces, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Alex and I talk about this all the time. As a matter of fact, when we first started talking about Lifecycle Insights, this was a big aha conversation, I think. And Alex, that's the difference between something being digital and something being automated, right? So just because you can put this in a spreadsheet and cobble it together and try to remind yourself with notifications every week to update it doesn't mean you shall, and doesn't mean you should. So finding ways to get insights into data around all of these things that we've talked about is really critical, right?
This is why I despise the digital transformation conversation, because digital really is no better than paper if you don't do anything
with it.
If you can't automate it, right? If you can't do something additional to add value.
Yeah. So this is just some screenshots of kind of the insights that you want to understand around your stack alignment, right? So if a client is 39% aligned to your best practices, first, that means a couple of things. We just talked about supportability, scalability, security, et cetera. But also that means that the other 61% is either unprotected or being serviced by another IT provider. And if in the world of folks talking about landing and expanding, if I've got 39%, I'm worried someone else is doing 61% of that work and could take the rest of my 39%. So that's not really a safe alignment score, even if they're very happy on that percent of the stack. Alex, you and I talk to folks all of the time that are concerned that they're doing great work with their clients, but they want to do business reviews to fight off someone else coming in saying, well, does your IT provider provide MFA?
Well, we had one customer come to us and tell us he had to start doing business reviews because his crosstown competitor learned that he wasn't, and was running around telling all of his customers that he should be meeting with them quarterly, and this is what that quarterly meeting should look like. And he says, I need to go figure out how to do this because I'm getting my butt kicked. This guy's eating my lunch at all my existing accounts. Wow. And he had to go start doing it defensively. I would much rather MSPs start doing it offensively, because they're protecting their current client base, doing better by them, making more money with them, than because they've already lost 10 grand in MRR and want to avoid losing any more.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one area you don't want to skimp. This is one area you don't want to, say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna delay this. I mean, this is a critical component, a critical piece to the strength of that relationship.
And that's a huge problem right now, because what are MSPs overwhelmed with? Blinky, flashy lights, alerts, spam notifications, false alarms, noise from an RMM tool. And when you're overwhelmed with everything else, it's easy to not make the time to do this, because the client's not complaining. I guess they're okay. They're not bitching. They must be all right. and we get right back to that silence is deadly.
And that's, I was going to say, so let's add some more of our favorite quotes. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or the enemy of done is the right. So
Right.
you got to start somewhere. And again, Alex and I always joke that, we'll stop saying QBRs when people stop Googling QBRs. But at the same time, people think capital QBRs, right? And they're thinking the full shebang, all the things. But if you're not doing anything, you can start somewhere. And so that is, I would hope one of the takeaways of this would be, what is one thing that you could do tomorrow to make an impact on this? Is it, I need to segment my client base and and set a cadence for, I'm going to do this and commit to that? Is it everybody gets an asset inventory? There's something you could do tomorrow that is not overwhelming. That is not, okay, folks, we're going to cancel family vacation. I've decided we're doing QBRs, right? That's not
Right.
where we're going for that. And the goal being to get that process in a place where you get some insights. I just clicked on this insight into, so here I've pulled up Alex's imaginary accounts, and he is the account manager for Hogwarts. And I can see that Hogwarts is red because they're not aligned to my stack. So I hope
I would fire me, but that's okay.
working. Well, you're on an improvement plan. And
Right, there you go. There you go.
Right.
But you can see that there's opportunity there, right? So Hogwarts is a threat. I know the numbers behind this because I've toggled it, and this is just a screenshot, but they're 13% aligned to my stack. But there's a $6,600 per month MRR opportunity, right? So is it Chinese? It's not folklore that says that in crisis that presents both danger and opportunity. And so this red is both a threat because they're not well aligned to the stack, but is also opportunity because there's a place to expand in that customer base.
Absolutely.
And what we have to think about is that, the first time you do your business review, it won't be perfect, and that's okay. I always tell everybody when you get done with your first business review, just ask your customer, did I deliver some value to you here?
Right.
Today? Right. They'll give you an honest answer. Right. And the follow-up to that is, at what cadence would it make sense for us to circle back and have you see this value again? Because it's going to change. Is this something we should do twice a year? Is this something we should do quarterly or once a year? What makes sense to you, Mr. Customer? And once they tell you that, number one, you'll learn that you delivered something that had value, or they'll tell you that you didn't. And they'll help you set the cadence. They'll help you decide how often they want to see that kind of information. If they tell you that you didn't deliver value, it's a really easy question to ask. What did you need to see today that I didn't deliver? What would have been helpful? What would have had value to you if it had been in the stack of reports that we talked about today? Right. And take that feedback and go make it better the next time. And if you take that feedback, they're going to want to come back to see what you bring the next time because they told you what they wanted to see. Right. This is about letting the customer at least feel like they're setting the stage. In my mind, budget is one of the most important things you can deliver to your customer, but it might be one of the hardest to build. So it might be that you start with a partial budget that's just Windows endpoints, right? The stuff that I've got an agent on that I can inventory and give you a budget around. You might come back the next time and add printers to that. You might come back and add network equipment to that, and slowly but surely expand it to give them a full budget of all their assets.
And to throw in another quote that I love, we got to throw another quote in here.
I have them all today.
Yeah, that ties into the quote Marnie talked about when it comes to perfection is Guy Kawasaki. I've said this 1 million times. Don't worry, be crappy. And Guy Kawasaki, he's a former Apple executive, and he's amazing guy. And basically what he means by that is, it doesn't mean deliver something that's crappy. It means get something out there, do something and refine it. Because if you wait for it to be perfect, your competition will surpass you. And that just ties into what Alex was saying is the defensive versus offensive mode, right?
Yep.
And, you could be sitting out there and saying, well, I'm not sure how to do this. I don't know what to deliver. I don't know what the customers want. One thing, what Alex was just talking about is ask the client, right? And I think we fail to do that often is just ask the client, what do they want?
The reason I hate the phrase quarterly business review, or the term quarterly business review, is it doesn't talk about why we're there, right? A business review. No, we're here to be strategic. We're
Mhm.
here for strategic planning. And strategy isn't something done by one person, it's something done by a leadership team. So you're a member of the team working with the leadership to build strategy. So bring your half-baked QBR to the table and strategize on how to give them more of what they need, right?
Oh,
And get their input and build it together.
Yeah.
that is the perfect conversation to kind of move to
I,
the next.
I meant to do that. Yeah.
That
Because I memorized all these yesterday when you showed them to me.
yeah, the Getting Naked book, Patrick Lencioni. I always say be sure to Google that with the author's name.
Yeah.
That book is all about, you don't have to have the answer. You have to ask the questions so that you can brainstorm the answers. So if you're looking for more conversation on how to bring customer success as a actual program instead of just willy-nilly relationship based on how you met the person, I highly recommend these books.
It's a great book. One of my favorite things that he talks about is don't be afraid to ask the dumb question, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you had the question, somebody else at the table probably did too and wasn't willing to ask it. And the worst thing that the customer is going to do is, correct you and go, oh, of course you should know that. Don't you remember? That's the worst thing that's going to happen. The best thing that's going to happen is you're going to go down a road and explore something that might have gone uncovered, and get some more insight onto where the client's going or what they're trying to achieve.
I did so I've got the LinkedIn pages for us on the next slide, Alex, but I did throw up a coupon code for folks. And if anybody wants to chat with us, Alex and I are happy to chat business reviews, whether you are a life cycler or not a life cycler. We will talk customer success all day long. I'll have a book study on any of these.
We'll teach you how to do all this manually if you're a masochist and don't value your own time. Yeah,
absolutely. But if you do decide you want to check out life cycle and you are a first timer, the Everything MSP code will get you $50 off for the first 3 paying months.
That's awesome.
Pro tip, take the free trial first. So,
right.
let's do that. So Alex and I are happy to chat, answer questions, have a conversation if folks want to chat, and would love for you to reach out to us. Alex Farling's popular enough. He has to have his middle initial J in on LinkedIn, but thankfully they only made one Stockman. So you can just search for me on there and find it. So would love to hear if anybody has feedback, if they are aiming to segment their client base. Patrick said, Marnie knows I'll be all QBR life cycler soon. Absolutely. He and I have met a few times to get him going in there. So if folks are thinking, yeah, I'm doing this, or I need to do it, curious what thing will move the needle, tomorrow. What's something you could do tomorrow?
Well, and the other thing too is, we don't want our clients to think that this QBR is a sales pitch. I think often they feel it's the Trojan horse, which, in reality it kind of is, because if we are doing this right, we're selling without selling. But we don't have to present it as this is a sales meeting, because it's not. It's a strategic meeting. And in the long run, you will end up selling things, but they're going to align completely with that business's goals and objectives. And if we make sure that the client understands that this is a strategic review and nothing else, they are going to be there, they're going to be present, they're going to be engaged, and it is going to be worth both their time and yours. And you will walk away with opportunities because you are working to help them fulfill their needs, and not just to try to sell them something.
You mentioned making this worth your time and theirs. And I used to tell a story about my biggest customer when I did QBRs for them. And I did a particular QBR for them and it just really landed flat. I didn't feel like they took the value from it. So I really went home and kind of tried to tear that one apart. And they were a huge customer. There were 12 or 13 people in the room. I don't know, it was a bunch. And it was, the CIO, the CEO, the COO, the CFO. And then they had a bunch of program directors and department heads and all these other people in the room. So there's a ton of people in the room. And I'm looking at content that was really pretty poorly selected. I'm in there to go, well, so-and-so didn't take their security training, but you should love us because we did all your backups and all your patching. And it was just, I didn't do a good job. And what I took away from it was the value that you deliver should be somewhat comparable to the cost of the room that you're in. And I was sitting in a room that cost my client $800 an hour to pull all those people out of their job and come sit them in a room with me. I had to
Right.
deliver a hell of a presentation to
Yeah.
justify them taking frontline managers out of 9 locations, driving them through across Delaware. Thank God it's a small state, but they still had to drive them across Delaware to
Yeah.
bring them into a conference room to have this conversation with me. And here I am delivering what was essentially just a bunch of cobbled together reports out of a bunch of different systems. And that was actually, kind of the conversation that Marnie and I had when we started this company was, it's hard for me to automate this process. And therefore everything looks cobbled together and feels cobbled together. And that is reflected in the value that the customer gets in the stuff that they take home. So think about the room that you have, understand that you should have more than the CEO in that room, right? If we're talking strategy, unless you're working with a very small business, they have a team of people whose input they value when they go to make a strategic decision. And one of the questions you can ask when you're setting this up is, hey, Mr. Customer, hey, Dan, who are the people on your team whose input you like to take and you value when you're making a big strategic decision in the business? It might be right for them to be in the room for this conversation.
And it moves you from being an MSP that is strictly a managed services provider and the focus is on service to being a managed strategy provider, and your focus is all on the strategy, and you become one of their best assets.
Well, my goal is to become a member of their leadership team.
Right.
And, we talk about the phrase VCIO, the term VCIO, and it's virtual chief information officer. It's a terrible name for that job too. It's almost as bad as QBR. It should
Right.
be FCIO for fractional chief information officer. If you pick that apart, I'm a guy who works a few hours a week on their business at the C level. And that means I should be a member of their leadership team.
Right.
If you pick that apart and really build it correctly, it's about being a strategic leader for them. It's not about, showing them that we backed up our backups. It's just, there's just more to it than that.
You want them to include you on many of the decisions that they're making. And when you show the value that you can provide from a strategic value perspective, you will be part of it.
And that's why we leverage the budget so hard, right? We bring them the budget so that they'll come back to us and lean on us for that particular component. And as we add a lot of value on the budget, then when they start to talk to me about the camera systems and the copiers and the door access control and all the weird little stuff that otherwise just shows up, and I get a phone call and they go, hey, the door access guy's here. He needs a switch port to plug into, and then things just show up on my network. Instead, I get brought into it way earlier in the conversation.
Right. Exactly. I don't see any questions.
That either means we nailed it or we need an alarm clock to go off right now.
Exactly. I want to say that we nailed it. You, Alex and Marnie, you guys always deliver valuable content, and I greatly appreciate it. And what I see when I think about Lifecycle Insights is it's not just a software tool. You guys pour your heart and soul into helping MSPs leverage the tool to make it more successful for them. Because it's not just about the tool, it's all the things that go into the tool to make it successful. And I applaud you guys for your efforts in what you do for that, because that's what we as MSPs need to be doing for our clients, the same thing. And it takes extra time and energy.
Well, if we talked about customer success and didn't deliver it, we would be quite the hypocrites. So.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, thank you for having us, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. We're at the top of the hour. Everybody, thank you for your time today. Again, we will be sending out the replay for this. It will be posted on everythinmsp.com. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to Marnie or Alex. They'll be happy to answer them for you. Again, Marnie, Alex, thank you for your time. Everybody else as well. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
See you guys.